Hey, I know some of you probably think that you can't talk to anybody in to explain how you're feeling in graduate school. So this was kind of the feeling that I had. And there was lots that was going on in my mind in terms of how to deal with these things. And I didn't really have anybody to sort of explain these experiences to and sort of go through these experiences. So I just want to tell you that you're not alone, and there is a lot of people out there just like you, and we're all struggling and getting by, and we're able to do this. So if you don't know me, I'm Professor Dave Maslach. I'm an associate professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship, and I created this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. There are so many people that help me out that I want to pay the favor for to help you out. You know, it's really difficult for me to talk about this often, where I felt so alone. So if you don't know my story, my parents were not well off in any sort of way. My dad was an immigrant that came from Poland. They had absolutely no money. They lived in a one-room house in the middle of northern Canada with a bunch of kids, and it was very, very tough upbringing in terms of how he was treated and sort of the stuff that they went through. And then my mom had a very similar experience. Grew up in sort of a very poor environment as well. So when they had me, we had gone through a lot, or they had gone through a lot already. So they had lived in a garage to save up for money for their house, and then that tells you, what it was like, right? So they lived in a garage for, I don't know how long it was, but to save up money to buy a house. And then once they had me, I was one of 5 kids at that time. Actually, one of them had unfortunately, she was murdered for whatever. I don't want to talk about it at this moment because I think the story is really long. But they went through a lot, and I was the youngest and the first one to go away to university. One of the first ones to actually finish high school and sort of have the passion for high school in a lot of the family, even extended family is sort of a big thing. To do this, to go through and experience all these things, living in a rural town, there's 6,000 people that were there, and growing up and all that kind of stuff. My grandpa was an alcoholic, World War II vet, and this really traumatized my family. These sort of things were really deep, very deep in terms of how they felt about things. And so going away to university was really foreign, just absolutely foreign. I remember having arguments. My dad didn't want me to go away to university. This was a big thing because obviously it was expensive. And it was a daunting thing to go through. And so it was my way of rebelling, of all things, was to go away to university and, get a college degree. How crazy is that? That was my way to rebel, was to say, I'll stick it to you. I'll really give it to you by going away and getting a college degree. This thing really resonated with me, but there was actually something that sort of was more difficult than that. And it was the fact of going into this environment where you look around and you see people from totally different environments, where they just kind of didn't really get what I went through, I think, of going through these things of, people that actually had parents that went away to university. It was like, that was unheard of for me. I was like, what? That's really bananas. So all of my friends that were in my undergraduate, they all had parents that went away to university. And I didn't experience that. That wasn't my experience at all. It was a real struggle for my parents to actually finish high school. My dad never finished. My mom finished once I went away to university, and when it was a big thing for our family, a big thing. Not going to get into that, but it was a very big thing for us. So it was very daunting to go through all of these things. And what I really noticed, or the thing it still holds me back a lot, it still really makes me struggle with things, is when I deal with other people that I think are of higher status or of higher order, whatever you want to call it. I get extremely nervous still, because this was sort of built into the family, that if you were not of working class, if you weren't sort of, if you weren't dirt, you weren't sort of doing the grind, and anything that wasn't sort of part of that was considered really foreign, and, more than foreign. It was like, we felt bad. We felt like we weren't good enough. We felt that they were somehow better, but really they just had a different life circumstance. There was nothing that was any different between us and them. They just had a slightly different life circumstance. And this was really really baked into generations of our family, where people, we didn't come from much. My grandma was an orphan. My mom's mom was an orphan. And, dealing with these sort of emotions and dealing with this was really holding the whole family back in terms of how we interacted with people. And this is really real, and it is difficult for me to talk about. But I think it's important for you to know, because I know that there's probably more than me that's going through this. But I want you to know, when you're going through this, there's so many people that are just like you, and I'm not the only one. You're not the only one that's experiencing these kind of things. Maybe you don't have it quite as bad as what I had it, in terms of having these sort of stigmas of what it feels like to be with somebody that was, of higher status. Man, it was so scary to interact with some of these folks, just even like friends at school. I was just really nervous of dealing with other people. I still have this feeling. It's never going to go away. I'm always going to have this feeling of feeling not good enough, and feeling like dirt, like feeling, and in my response, a lot of people in my family's response was to put their back up. But for me, my natural, and that's sort of your fight or flight response. And my response is to hide and to get nervous and not see anything. That's my response. But, like people that are very close to me in my family, their response was to get their back up and be all, kind of peacocking, I guess, right? Where you sort of say that I'm just as good. So I'm just saying with this is, if you're having any of these sort of experiences, no, you're not alone. There's a lot of people that go through what you're going through, and yeah, I'm just one giant nerd that's going through this kind of stuff as well. And I just thought it would be nice to let you know that you really can do this. If I did this, and now we're okay, we're doing okay, and we've sort of adjusted to these kind of things. It took me a long time to adjust to it, a very, very long time. So if you're going through any of these kind of things, go talk to somebody, go get therapy. That's going to be very helpful for you. But also, know that you're not alone, and you're a normal person, that what you're experiencing is very real, But at the same time, you are doing something wonderful. Don't ever discount what you're doing. Don't lose faith in yourself at this moment. You are doing some incredible things, and it's hard and it's daunting. And yes, you don't have it as good as what everybody else has it. You don't, because other people's families have gone through some of these things, so they know. But if this is your first experience and you're like me, it's going to be an uphill battle. You're going to have a lot of things that you're going to experience, and you're going to come through a lot of discoveries with what you're doing. So actually, I'm thinking right now, it's kind of funny that, I grew up with, I have ADHD. I didn't know that until about 2 years ago. And the reason why we figured that out, it was just sort of through happenstance, where I was sort of at my wife was going through and sort of reading up on some of the stuff, and she said, "This is you." I was like, "Yeah, I can't remember names. Like, there's no way I'm going to remember who you are very shortly. I'm so forgetful. All these kind of things. And it's like very symptomatic of it." And so dealing with this and the struggles that I had of I was in special ed until I was in like 5th grade. All of that stuff is undiagnosed. And yes, part of that was to do with, growing up in a rural community, but also part of that was to do with, if you don't know, if your family doesn't know about any of these kind of things, how are you ever going to get diagnosed, right? And they're going to think that it's kind of a silly thing. It's not that important. It doesn't really do anything. I remember these sort of conversations and these very real things, but it is important. It really does do a lot in your life, sort of mental health stuff. And so you can't discount it. It is a very real thing. I don't take medication. And I manage it in other ways through exercise and taking breaks and things like that. But, it is a really kind of incredible thing to go through and to look back of all these kind of things and putting these pieces of the puzzle together. But I want you to know that you are not alone. You will go through a lot of things and you'll discover so much about yourself, and that you are an incredible, real, authentic person. And if you're struggling in any sort of way, you got this. You really can get this at this moment. It is not going to be out of your control. And if you do have anything that's holding you back, just be okay with it. It's who you are as a person, and this is going to be your life. And be you. Be the great person you actually are. So that's all I want to say. I just want to give you some encouragement that you can do this. You're incredible, and keep going.